Mike and Lisa and the Morning Drive on AM800.
7:22 here on the Morning Drive, and the Canadian Mental Health Association has launched their Light the Way campaign. And this holiday season, you can help to light the way for those in our community mourning the loss of a loved one. And you can give a gift to the Canadian Mental Health Association, the Windsor-Essex County's branch's Bereavement program that really provides grief and counseling to children and adults in Windsor and Essex County. And there's all kinds of events going on over the next little while to support that. But in January of 2017, local couple Mike and Michelle Kuhlmann lost their 23-year-old son, Aaron, in a tragic car accident. And as you can imagine, their lives really spiraled out of control. And as they put so eloquently in a letter, they were left in their grief, a state of utter shock and disbelief, and really in a deep, dark fog. And that's where they sat for 4 months until they found the strength and the courage to call the Canadian Mental Health Association. And Mike Kuhlmann's on the line with us now to talk about how that bereavement program helped them.
Mike, thanks for joining us this morning. What finally made you pick up the phone and call CMHA?
I'll tell you the truth, it was my wife that picked up the phone and called CMHA. She had spent probably close to 4 months just sitting on the couch, not able to figure out what's going on in her life, no will to move forward, whatever, and had to get out of that, I'm going to say, that state of that she was in. And she called CMHA because when we had been given the news about Aaron's death, there was a card left behind, and she thought, okay, I've got to call this to try to figure out what's going on and get back. Somebody needs to help me.
Well, yeah, and I would imagine, Mike, that happens where the rest of the family suffers, right? I mean, you have 2 other children as well.
Correct. Yeah. And our 2 other children were off at school or off at work. So basically, I was trying to stay at work, and she was at home trying to figure out what was going on. She had taken time off work to try to figure things out and didn't know which way to turn, and there didn't seem to be any future moving forward. So she made the call to CMHA, and she went in and she met with Colleen Campbell, who was our bereavement counselor at the time. And after talking to her, she then Colleen recommended that we get into the bereavement group, but I needed to go in for private counseling before we go get to it as well. So I went in, I'm going to say reluctantly, because I didn't think that I really needed counseling. But when I met Colleen and she asked me a couple of questions to help me open up and talk about her story, I realized that maybe I did need more help than I thought I did. And from there, we got into the bereavement group. And the bereavement group was, to say the least, a lifesaver. There's volunteers in that group that have gone through the same thing that we've gone through, obviously a lot earlier than we did, so they're in a different state in their life. There's other parents in that group who've gone through the same scenarios we've gone through, whether it's an accident, the same as what we had, or it was an illness. Regardless of what the circumstance was, the end result was the same. And everybody's in a different state of mind, or a different state in the healing process. And one of the things that the bereavement group does is it helps you tell your story, get it out in the open. Everybody else tells their story and things that they're going through. And sometimes after the loss of a child, I'm going to say almost always after the loss of a child, you experience things that you never knew that you would experience. And when you're telling your story and the other people in that room have experienced things similar to what you're experiencing, you realize that you're not going crazy, that it is something that's real. Maybe it's a supernatural state of mind, but it gives you a completely different feeling about, or different perspective about life. And every time you tell the story and you talk about some of your experiences, it's almost like it becomes a way of transforming your grief to mourning. And they talk about in the program, it's the mourning where you start to heal. Now, almost 3 years later, my wife and I are still on this emotional roller coaster, but we know what to expect. We know how to deal with the different hills and valleys and twists and turns that we're going to experience, and we feel like we can get on with our lives again, whereas 2.5 years ago when we first got into the program, we didn't know whether we were going to make it through the next day.
I can just imagine. Well, it sounds like you've been helped tremendously, Mike. Thank you so much for sharing the story of you and your wife, Michelle, and the loss of your son, Aaron. And you know, you can help too. This Ligth the Way campaign is to really raise money for the bereavement program that Mike Kuhlmann just talked about. So you can go to windsor-essex.cmha.ca/Ligth the Way. And if you're at the mall at all today, today's the last day for this. You can purchase an ornament in memory of a loved one until the end of today in the old food court area. And that money as well goes towards that bereavement program.
Okay.
It's so valuable in our community.
It really is. And I've heard about this program all the time, being the MC for their golf tournament that benefits these type programs at CMHA. So, yeah, if you can support that, stop by Devonshire Mall today. And you can find out more information. Just search Windsor-Essex CMHA on Google, and you'll find all the information there. 7:29.